Hey everybody. So this is kind of an unlikely tale about a speed sensor for this great looking 1991 Honda Prelude. My friend Pete bought this car and he had had one when he was younger and it's really good looking. But so he bought one that was in really great shape and there was a problem. He couldn't find a speed sensor. And I got to tell you, this is the first time that I've ever not been able to find a part for a car in my whole life. And I have had a lot of cars, and it's just amazing. And other people have this problem. So if you just look around the internet a little bit, my vehicle speed sensor nightmare. Apparently, there were four different speed sensors on this year of car, and the particular one that he had is just impossible to find. And in fact, this one right here, this is exactly the problem. Where the one on the left is the one that he had. This is some guy 10 years ago from the internet, and then all he could find was this more generic one. And we looked everywhere, and I found cross references. Pete bought one from Japan. He's tried mini parting out. Literally, just it was basically impossible to find this speed sensor, and the car throws a code without the speed sensor. So just to show you the problem a little bit, the one on the bottom here, this is the one that came on the car and it had failed. Mechanic looked at it and they actually took the insides out, so there was no trying to fix it. And then the one on the top is is one that you can buy, and they're pretty cheap. They're like $12, but they don't fit. And if you kind of look at it, you can see that the tabs don't look like they're quite in the right place. And it's even worse when you look at them in reality. So what I did was I got a pair of calipers out and I actually created drawings in the computer. And so this is the original speed sensor here. And then here's the one you could buy. Here's a new one. And if I put the two together, you'll see the problem. There's two problems. So you can see if I kind of line up the barrel there, the um, the tabs are in the wrong place, right? They need to move over and up a little bit. And then even worse, they're quite a bit longer in the original one, right? So they're almost a quarter inch or so longer. So there's no using the existing speed sensor in the new spot. And so, like I said, we looked and looked and looked, and finally we decided, you know what, I'm just gonna have to build it. And I took forever, right? I took like a long time to do it, but finally I saw Pete the other day, and he reminded me about it. I'm like, oh, I better do it. And so went and got some stock and fired up the milling machine. And I'll tell you, in machining, like most of the work, it seems like is to make the block that you make the part out of first, right? So this is me doing the first machining operation on the block and essentially facing one of the sides, and then here's a face mill, or a fly cutter it's called, and this makes the surface flat. And so I went through probably 5 or 6 steps to get a rectangle the right size and perfectly square in all the dimensions. And once you've done that, you can start work. So here are the two sensors. Again, the one on the left is the original one, and the one on the right was the essentially the donor one that I had. And then there's my block that I've machined to make an adapter. And then what I did from there was go, and you can see this is one of the first machining operations of the new block. I started to cut it out. Here's another video. You can see here I'm drilling the holes for the bolts. Pex in there. This is the half finished, right? So generally what you do is you do one half and then the other, because you can flip it around in the vise, and so you can see I've got the holes in there, and then the two tabs out there, and then the unfinished part there will become the top. And so here's another look at that. So here I am machining out the two tabs, and you can run the mill a lot faster, but I just had one part, and that's all I was doing, so I went slow. Here's another look. This is cutting the little relief for the barrel for the circle. So you can see we just did that round and round. And finally, I ended up with a completed part. There it is, and you can see there's the little cutout for the round barrel, and these are the two tabs that are the right dimensions. And here's another look at it on the side. So this is the finished adapter. And then the idea is that I'm going to take and I'm going to cut away the original tabs from the donor one, and I'm going to affix the new one to this piece. And so here's a look at that. This is how you set the zero on the milling machine. So this is called a taster. It's a German device, but what you do is you essentially you set one edge to zero, and it knows kind of half the dimension of the ball. And then what you do is you go to the other side and you do the same thing, and then you know where the middle is, right? So every time you put a part in the mill, you've got to zero it out. It's actually one of the most time-consuming things about the machining project. And then here I am cutting the donor sensor. You can see I've filled everything with tape so that none of the aluminum chips get in there. And I'm just starting to cut away the tabs. And then here's a look, the tabs are gone. And now I'm starting to cut down to the barrel. And here the barrel is almost done. And finally I've done. So I've taken this new part that ostensibly works, and I've cut away its original tabs, and I've got my adapter here. And the idea is that we'll put the two together like that, and then we'll have a product that fits Pete's 1991 Prelude. So there you can see it fits just great in there. And there's the original one, and there's a new one, and they do seem to fit. And another view of it. And then finally, what I did was I glued it all together, right? So I used some two-part epoxy. I was actually thinking of TIG welding it. You know, TIG welding it's a lot stronger, but ultimately I decided not to. I was afraid to damage the internals of the sensor with heat, so I just slathered a ton of epoxy. So it's two-part epoxy Devcon, and you see there's the not yet cleaned up but essentially finished part, and I'll have to I'll have to grind away the epoxy in the area where the sensor goes in, but I think that thing's not going anywhere. And Pete, I really hope it works, and that you get your car running without a code. Thanks a lot.